It's about 7 o'clock, and I would like to welcome everyone to tonight's Yom HaShoah service. We're fortunate enough to welcome Todd Hennessy, who will be speaking later on, and we'll make an introduction to him. But on behalf of Rabbi Coleman and Dan Yolis and Lisa Thorner and the Sinai community, wanted to make sure that all of those who are here this evening to commemorate the beginning of Yom HaShoah begins, of course, in the Erev, and we will have a few people that'll be joining us for lighting memorial candles to pay respect for those the 6 million who were murdered, and 4 of those have designated or hopefully will light candles in memory of loved ones that they will personally memorialize. So Dan's going to bring us to in the right mood with an important song. But I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that we have in our Mishkan Tefillah the prayers that are specifically set up for Yom HaShoah, and we're going to do some of the evening prayers as well. In part, it's because what the Nazis tried to snuff out was the flame of our faith, the flame of our family. And by reaffirming our faith and our family, we shine against that darkness and bring to disappointment all of those anti-Semites who have always tried to snuff us out. So on this night of memorializing those who died, we realize that each person is a light. Each person is part of this beautiful family of Bnei Yisrael that has a mission to carry on, to shine against the darkness. Dan, would you lead us in a song?
Ani mamin, ani mamin, ani mamin, be'emunah shelema. Beviat HaMashiach ani mamin, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach ani mamin, ani mamin, ani mamin, ani mamin, be'emunah shelema, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach ani mamin, beviat HaMashiach, beviat HaMashiach ani mamin.
If you have a Mishkan Tefillah at home, or if you would like to go to the Temple Sinai website, there is an electronic, a digital copy of it. The prayers, you can also just listen and participate. In this first part especially, we have 4 people who are prepared to share special prayers as they light a memorial candle. And I'd like to start with Ricky Zwerin, and Ricky is with Rabbi Ray Zwerin in their new apartment. And Ricky, your story is quite remarkable, and if you would unmute, please, and share just a little bit and light the candle in memory of your loved ones.
Oh, okay, I want to memorize my sister. Here is her picture just before she died. And my mother and my father at their marriage marriage ceremony.
Wow.
All three of them perished in the Holocaust, and in their memory, I light the candle.
Thank you, Ricky. Jean Guthrie, your beloved was a survivor. He found his way to survive all the way in Asia, and there were a lot of his loved ones that did not make it. Would you share a candle?
Yes, this is in memory of my father-in-law, Frank Guthrie's family, namely his parents and one of his sisters who were murdered at Auschwitz, and another sister who survived Auschwitz but was experimented upon by Mengele.
Mm. Mark Reisner, do you have a camera that can come on? Mark and Susan Reisner? I hope so. I'm going to call upon Mark, try to get your camera on. As Shirley Beer Powell, your family also are survivors. Would you please light Shirley and unmute and share a few words?
This, of course, is in memory of the Beers, the Beer family, and the Carton family. My mother was Carton. My father obviously was Beer. But I think I want to say a special something to those who survived with them, in the sense that we live on to tell their stories and honor them. We have a great privilege as well as a great burden to do so. And it's our job in their honor to light these candles and light the world.
Thank you, Shirley. So if you light your candle, and I know the Reisners are scrambling, but I'm glad that you're there, because as we have this opportunity to, as you know, you're children of survivors. And if you'd like to unmute, just share just a few words about your family.
Well, my father was the only one of his family to have survived the Holocaust. He was with his, he was arrested in 1942 in Germany with his mother Hedwig, with his father Max, and his brother Hans Werner, as well as a great-grandmother Jenny, who was about 90 years old. And they were deported. As I said, my father was the only survivor. He was at the end of the war. He was just before he was liberated. He was in Buchenwald with his father and brother, and yet the Germans and Nazis just couldn't stop killing Jews. And my father believes his brother and father were on a death march out of Buchenwald, and he never saw them again. And throughout his life, he was always looking for them and hoping that his brother would surface, because his brother was 5 years younger. So very sobering and sad. And it stays with me in my life as well. So yeah. I light this candle, not just for them, but for our people who have been persecuted and have suffered.
Great. Thank you, Mark. We have 2 more candles I want to make sure that we light. And one is for all of the Temple Sinai members who are survivors. And I think of Trudy Strauss, and who turned 106 this week, just this past week, and is strong and good. And she remembers all of incredible challenges that she had, as well as Ozzy Sladek, who will be speaking tomorrow at Lunch and Learn, and so many others. Rabbi Zweren, you know so many of the others in our community. So we won't be able to name all of them, but those who know that when they came to Temple Sinai, their stories would be honored, their loved ones who perished would be remembered, and the mission, the sense of mitzvah, of love and faith and family within the Jewish people shines on with our community. And I ask Rabbi Susan and Sam, because there's a sixth candle that is lit.
So I'm lighting this candle in memory of my paternal grandmother's family, 69 members of the Fetner family of Horodenka, Poland, who were victims of the Holocaust.
And I'm lighting in memory of the children.
Dan has this song, L'Ador of Ador, which speaks so beautifully of our hope that each generation will know that it carries forth not just memories of Holocaust and pain, but of the faith and the determination to build a better world.
We are gifts and we are blessings. We are history in song. We are hope and we are healing. We are learning to be strong. We are words and we are stories. We are pictures of the past. We are carriers of wisdom, not the first and not the last. Ledor vador nagid god lecha. Ledor vador we protect this chain from generation to generation. Ledor vador, these lips will praise your name. Looking back on the journey that we carry in our hearts, from the shadows of the mountain to the waters that would part. We are blessed and we are holy. We are children of your way, and the words that bring us meaning, we will have the strength to say. Ledor vador nagid god lecha. Ledor vador we protect this chain
whenever we celebrate, when we mourn, when we're doing anything that's somewhere in between, we offer prayers. That's what we know to offer. It's what we have to fill these moments. And so we are going to pray a bit together this evening. We are on page 4 in the flip book online. And we invite you, if you'd like, to rise and face east for the Baruch Hu. Page 4.
Yai lai lai, ya lai lai lai, ya lai lai, ya lai lai lai. Yai lai lai, ya lai lai lai, ya lai lai, ya lai lai lai. Ya lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai. Ya lai lai lai.
We turn to page 6 in our prayer books as we praise God as for bringing on the evening, which out my window it looks like it's coming. So we'll offer Ma'ariv Aravim in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro Ma'ariv Aravim, b'chochma potech she'arim, uvitvuna meshane itim u'machalif et hazmanim, u'mesader et ha'kochavim b'mishmeraltem berakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or, u'ma'avir yom u'mevi layla, u'mavdil bein yom u'vein layla, Adonai tzavaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Praise to you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. We turn to page 9 and read the English on the top of the page. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. The Shema is on the following page.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
The Ahavta is on page 12.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadarim ha'ele אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We turn page 17. We read on page 17. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai, that wherever we are, it is eternally Egypt, that there's a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Mi Chamocha is on the opposite side of the page, page 16.
Mi Chamocha, Bailim Adonai, Mi Chamocha, Neder Bakodesh, Nora Tehilot.
We turn to page 19 and offer a prayer of comfort, of feeling safe and secure in the face of all of the big and scary and daunting things in our world, praying that we find a Sukkah Shlomecha, a shelter of God's peace. We sing Hashkivenu on page 19.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ushmor tzeiteinu uvoenu lechaim u'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim.
Dan's going to lead us in the Chatzi Kaddish on page 20.
Yitkadam v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'yamad yirachyote v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yom echon uv'chayei de kol beit Yisrael Bagala, bagala, uvizman kariv, vimeru, amen. Yehi shmira bamevarach, le'alamul al me'al maya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudusha barechu leilan min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damid rabbe alma v'meru amen.
We take time now for the silent Amidah. The prayers for the tefillah during the weekdays begin on page 74, or just take time to have your own private meditation. For the Temple Sinai community, Todd Hennessy needs no introduction. He's been a teacher in our religious school in our community for many years now. He's also a firefighter. He's a man who is a hero, not only educationally, but he has put his life on the line to save many, many families and rescue people in times of distress. Todd Hennessy truly is a hero. He took upon himself some years ago to really understand more deeply what happened during the years of the Shoah. And Todd has subsequently traveled back and forth to Europe and to various other places to learn more, to learn from the leading teachers and to become then one of the leading teachers. And now, and he's going to tell us just a little bit about this in about a moment, he's one of the leaders in the United States of Yachad and Unum, and that is an organization that was founded by Father Dubois, who has been hosted at Temple Sinai twice over the years. He's a Catholic priest who then devoted his ministry, if you will, to uncovering the murder of 1 million Jews, not in concentration camps, not in the death camps, but rather in the killing fields. His discovery led him to call it Holocaust by bullets, because the Nazis discovered that you could murder people and hide them in the woods or in a pit, and maybe no one would ever know. Subsequently, many other generations of murderers have discovered the same thing, not to build death camps, but to murder people in the fields. Well, Father Dubois, and with help of the people like Todd Hennessy and his many co-workers, are going from village to village in Ukraine, in Romania, in Latvia, in Poland, and they have been uncovering those fields, not literally uncovering, but discovering who was buried there. How did it happen? Can they find the perpetrators? And Todd, the stories that you tell on every occasion continually bring me to tears, bring me to such deep appreciation for the devotion that you have, and that that you are willing to spend this evening sharing with us some of your stories, some of what's going on there, and the lessons that you want us to walk away with on this evening. So without further ado, Todd Hennessy, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm going to share my screen with everyone now. And I'm going to take you through the work that we do, mostly from the educational side, but obviously with the significance of this evening and Yom HaShoah, this is also in memory. And having now, I think I'm in my 26th year as a Holocaust educator and still learning myself. This is every year looking at this in a different way, and having been at Temple Sinai now for over 10 years within the religious school, a lot of what everything that you're going to see tonight, I share with our students at various grade levels, 6th through 10th, and then we share obviously with the congregation in a couple different projects as well too. So the importance here is the memory tonight, and we are memorializing the 6 million that were lost. We also recognize those that survived. One of our goals right now is to actually try to identify each and every one. Now, Yad Vashem is working on this rather large project, and they've got the Hall of Testimony at Yad Vashem. But our work when we go out into the field is to obviously to identify, to interview, but also to learn as much as we can about the victims. I'm going to show you a couple examples of that here tonight as we go through this. This is just a small snippet, if you will, of what we do. I'm always available for questions and things of that nature. So we'll go from there. If you remember back into 2017, we had the Yahad Nunam traveling exhibit at Temple Sinai. You walked in the front foyer and we had the big display, and then it wrapped around and went into the multipurpose room. And this was one of the photographs that was in that display, that big front display, and was also in one of the other smaller in the 5-step process that we work with. And this photograph, the first time I ever saw this photograph was when we put up the traveling exhibit. And Patrice Ben Simon, at that time, the Yahad Nunam education director, he and I were having a conversation standing right at Temple Sinai in the foyer. And I asked him, I said, do we know anything about these people? And he gave me a lot of information. You know, the day that this photograph was taken, we know the photographer, we know the location, we know the series of events. Unfortunately, we do not know their names. And then he said something to me that really stuck and sticks with me right now. And I use in my teaching, both with students and when we teach other teachers, is he said, Todd, quite frankly, he said, this may be the only evidence that these people ever existed. He said, given the location in Ukraine, given the time frame that we're talking about, 1941, it's could be conceivable that most of these people had never had their photographs taken. Obviously, this particular photograph is the last photograph that was taken before they were murdered. There were no survivors in Lubny. And we have no reason to think that anyone was able to escape and then hide their identity afterwards. So that stuck very, very much with me, that the numbers, the 6 million number, the numbers when you talk about Babi Yar and you talk about Auschwitz, you talk about a number of other locations, those numbers are so large and we just can't comprehend those. And so what we try to do now, and Yahad's been doing this since 2004, is we go out into the field and we interview, we research, we talk with those people who were there. And the gentleman on the right, that's Markham, Mikhail, he is 94 years old. This is November of 2018. This is Raj, just a little bit southwest of Bereziny in Poland, Ternopil Oblast. And you kind of tell here, but he's got 2 canes. I can tell you this, it's 0 Fahrenheit that day. It was absolutely cold. I said, it's November, and they kept telling me, no, it's Ukraine. And this is a spot where we were not knee deep in the snow. Right behind us, just behind these trees, is a mass grave, approximately 2,500 victims. This is one of the mass graves that was not registered. This is one of the mass graves that is not from a particular village. From what we understand from our research and research of others, is that these were Jewish individuals that were being moved from location to location. It was determined at some point in time that they couldn't go any further. Either there was no food, there wasn't enough perpetrators to move them, and so the execution took place. He witnessed this. He was able to see this, and he wanted to make sure we knew about it. So our job now is to take that unknown, just a photograph or just a conversation, and put evidence, if you will, to it. If you remember, okay, I'm not moving forward here. Father Dubois was at Temple Sinai. This was his presentation in November of 2017, and he spoke about the work that we do. We just had a meeting this morning, and I'm very pleased to say that we're going to continue our investigations now through 2023. And we just made a commitment to continue our current education process through 2026. This is a big step. And this ensures us moving forward to make sure that this history, one, is recorded. Two, we can get as much information as we can about those victims, and not just the circumstances surrounding their death, but more importantly, their life, what that community looked like for, in some cases, hundreds of years prior to, what it looks like 50 years beforehand, who those individuals were, those families. And I can tell you, and I'll probably say this a couple times tonight, is every single time that we've sat with a witness, they have identified individual Jewish neighbors by name and their families. And so we'll sit there between our team leader and our interpreter and our videographer and our cameraman, and then the note taker, the script, and we write these down. And when I say we say Yahad Nunam, we've turned these names, these locations, over to Yad Vashem so that those names can be memorialized at the Hall of Names at Yad Vashem. And so this is where we move to now. The also importance of this, and Rabbi and I have had this conversation a couple times here recently, is, this is not 75 plus years ago. This is stuff that's going on right now. And in Colorado, we now have legislation that requires the teaching of the Holocaust and genocide studies to graduate from high school. This will go into effect in July 1st, 2023. And so we've been working towards, and we'll continue to work towards, to make sure we train as many teachers in Colorado as we possibly can to have this part of the narrative. I'm also associated with another group here in Colorado, the Colorado Holocaust Educators, where it's a much larger picture. And we work with Yad Vashem, the USHMM, Echoes and Reflections, the Shoah Foundation, for example, so that we can give those educators the big picture and incorporate all the narratives. So when we're talking about the victims of the Holocaust, we talk about the ones that perished in the ghettos, those that perished in the T4 program, in the concentration camps, the killing centers, and obviously the killing fields in Eastern Europe. Just this year, February of 2021, this book was released by Professor Wendy Lauer, and I'm putting the cover of the book over this actual execution for a reason. Not wanting to get into the graphics here, but the importance of this is Professor Lauer. She's been to Colorado. She's spoken to our Colorado teachers. She went on one of these field trips, very much like I go on, back in 2016, August of 2016, to a little village called Miropol, Ukraine. And she was able to determine that this photograph right here was taken on that day, September 13th, 1941. And she is working to identify as much as she can from this. Now, I don't want to spoil the book. I would highly encourage you to read this book, to get it. It's a quick read. It's not an easy read, obviously, because of the content behind it, the context. But what was fascinating when we sat with Professor Lauer last fall, and we knew this book was coming out, is those 5 individuals on the left-hand side are all identified. We know who they are. So they are not just unnamed perpetrators. We know exactly where they're from, and we know their fates. 2 of them were executed for the crimes that they committed. All 5 of them were not. The 2 Germans in the photograph are actually customs agents. They are not Einsatzgruppen. They are not police battalion members. They are not Gestapo. They are customs agents who, from what we can gather, wanted to say they were a part of this process. The other 3 are Ukrainian nationals. The other fascinating part about this photograph is we know the photographer and we have the camera. The camera is currently at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. Because the photographer, because of what he did with this, being a part of this and being on there, he actually kind of changes his narrative with the history of the Holocaust, and actually is being looked at as possibly being a righteous among the nations for some work that he does back in Slovakia after this photograph was taken. So the importance of this history and the learning and the narratives that we've had for decades now are so important, but there's new narratives that we need to learn that expand and give us more light to the big picture and to every victim of this event. Our purpose at Yahad is to investigate, to educate, and engage. And I hope I'm a part of all three of these processes, but there's so many other people that are involved as well too. In fact, Rabbi Susan Rines, I've leaned on her for a couple translations with some headstones from a cemetery that we discovered in a little town of Karapets. And so the Temple Sinai community has been very gracious in allowing me to share this with you, but also helping with some of our research as well. One of the first villages I visited is a small town called Padisti. It's in Ternopil Oblast. This was the third day on my first trip to Ukraine. And the significance of this particular, and all of them, again, are significant, is this was one of the first villages where we had kind of a lot of information, pre-information before we left. We had some photographs of what the synagogue looked like. We knew a little bit about the community. If you're familiar with Arthur Murray, the famous dance instructor, this is his actually hometown. So we had some history behind it. But I can honestly tell you, until you walk on the streets of this community, it takes on a whole different light. This is that same synagogue today. It is vacant. There is not a Jewish community in Padisti. Approximately 4,300 Jews are going to die through various actions over 3 years. And then another 2,000 are going to be deported to the killing center of Belzich. Kind of in a brief explanation here, this is the work that we do. So we identify this 5-step process that Father Dubois has established now of over 7,200 interviews. And so we're able to go through this village and identify where all of these pieces of the Jewish life took place. The kind of diamond, the purple diamond shaped triangle with the number 5 in the middle, that was the ghetto that was essentially established prior to the final executions and the liquidation. Down toward the bottom, there's a red number 4 in a green diamond shape. That is the Jewish cemetery, and it's a very large, very established, very old Jewish cemetery, which obviously lends us to believe, it's a very large, very vibrant Jewish community, obviously with the synagogue as well too. So we're able to walk through this and put this process together. The significance for me that day, and I'm without hyperbole here, I will never forget this day, is meeting with Markin, born in 1930. And we were scheduled to meet with him for about 90 minutes that morning. We had 4 other individuals that we were going to try to meet with that day. And after about hour 9 with him, none of us wanted to leave. The candor in which he spoke and the information that he gave, and about 2 hours into the conversation, he starts speaking in Yiddish. And under no circumstance do I know Yiddish. I know a couple words. And of course, the one word that he said that I recognized right away was tukis. And we're like, well, wait a second, where's he going with Yiddish here? And he explained to us that his best friend, his next door neighbor, Moshe, that if he did not want to have his tukis kicked by Moshe's mom, he had to learn the language. This becomes significant a little bit later because of the objects on the right. What we know from this ghetto, and this was the first time I had heard this in my research, is the Germans refused to feed the Jewish families inside the ghetto. It was going to be put upon the responsibility of the village, the non-Jews. But the caveat to that is the Jewish people in the ghetto had to give something to get something. So the idea essentially is it's a slow death. It's a slow starvation, because at some point in time, they're going to run out of personal belongings. So Markin would go down to the ghetto every day with food, and through the fence, which was allowed, hand food to his friend Moshe, and he would then receive something from Moshe in return. And those are three of the objects, the fork, the spoon, and the chair, that Markin would bring back to his house. He put those in his attic. He was living in the same house in 2018 that he was in 1943. And when we were about 6 hours into the conversation, he climbs up into the attic and he comes down with this and he says, "This is all that is left of Moshe's family." These are objects that we obviously did not know existed, and these are the voice of Moshe's family at this point in time. Obviously, this is, I don't have a picture of him to share with you, but I have this story. And so we're able to then take this a little bit further, and we're continuing to do research there. We've actually, more teams have met with Markin since 2018 because of our initial contact with him. One of our other trips took me to Poland. Now I realize this is just an absolute nightmare, if you will, of a color scheme, and I apologize for that. But what I want to show you, this is South Central Poland. Krakow is kind of up toward the top, kind of to the left, circled with a big triangle in it. All of these rectangles that you see of colors, these represent villages in which shooting actions took place just outside of Krakow. Now, the significance of this is Auschwitz. If you're familiar with this, Auschwitz is 30 miles to the west of Krakow. The narrative thinking all of these individuals around the Krakow area, the Tarnow area, the Auschwitz area are going to be sent to Auschwitz, to the gas chambers. And that narrative is not 100% accurate. In fact, if you're from anywhere on this map and you're Jewish, and you are native here, you weren't deported in from Germany or Austria or the Czechlands, then you were sent to Belzec. And so you're actually put on a train to go further. Well, at one point in time, the Nazis are going to make the determination that putting them on the train was too expensive. So the shooting actions begin. And so all of these rectangles represent a shooting action. And there's different victim groups, but obviously by far the largest victim group are the Jews of this area. The reason why this becomes important is because of this town kind of down south a little bit, Mazana Dolna. And we've spent quite a bit of time in Mazana Dolna interviewing. And this is the original Jewish cemetery of Mazana Dolna going back into the 19th century. It's also a mass grave of the first shooting action in Mazana Dolna in 1941. The difference with this particular village, and because we've been there so often now, is now we're starting to build the community. So now we're getting more and more photographs of what the community looked like prior to the Nazi invasion, prior to the events of the Holocaust. And so because of this, it's not just another rectangle on a map that says there's 881 fatalities or 881 murders. We're actually being able to identify every single victim of Mazana Dolna. I can tell you right now, all 881 have been identified. And so the next part to our project is to have photographs of every single one of them. Now, obviously, in an ideal, perfect world, we would do this with every single city, village, shtetl that we could in Eastern Europe. I think that's going to be a lengthy task at best. Because of this, well, in order for us to get to this, is we have to have these individuals, and those are the witnesses. And these are the people that we've spent quite a bit of time with over the years and getting to know these stories and understanding the actions of the day. We understand this particular village so much that we can tell you at 8:31 in the morning on August 19th what exactly happened. This entire village, 881 Jewish people in this village, were gone within an hour and 47 minutes from start to finish. Their personal belongings of wealth were gone by the end of the day. This is, when you break it down a little bit more, how important it is for us to understand what took place, and then for us to share that, and then most importantly to teach that, so as we say, so it will never happen again. Probably for me, one of the more frustrating parts, and I say frustrating for a number of different reasons, there's no Jewish community in Mazana Dolna today, but you will find remnants of the Jewish community. And this is in the town square, the city square. And you will see on a couple of the door jams the evidence of the mezuzah on the door jam. And this one was very clear. It's highlighted there on the right-hand side, but you can see, if you look closely enough on the bottom part, you can see where the the fastener was used to attach it to the wooden frame. And so these are the things that we look for. It's the names, it's the Jewish life, it's the buildings, it's all of that. The last trip I was on was to Latvia, and we were in the Krzimi region in Western Latvia, right on the Baltic Sea. And as we come up into the memorial, this is the Baltic, and I can't even begin to tell you how serene, how beautiful this was. Unfortunately, I knew exactly where I was standing, and I knew why I was standing there and why I took this photograph, because 78 years earlier, this photograph was taken in almost the exact same spot. And so our investigation then takes us to the witnesses. And that photograph on the tablet right there is the same photograph I just showed you, and we're showing it to Lilia, who is an eyewitness to the executions on the Skida beach. 2,700 Jews of Liepāja and the surrounding region were murdered on December 15th through the 17th, 1941. Now I can throw out these dates and I can throw out these numbers and I can do all of this. And honestly, I'm past that point in my education. I get a little bit more concerned about and more interested in other things. So Lilia was able to walk us around, and we knew, again, because of our pre-research and where we were, is we were able to then go to this location right here, and which is here, again, 78 years earlier. And this is what I'm talking about, naming these individuals. The young lady who's looking right at the camera with her arms crossed, that's Mia Epstein. She's 18 years old. The majority of her executioners that day were her classmates, Ukrainian nationals who joined the either local national organization or the Latvian SS. Her mother is to her right-hand shoulder, bending over, and her brother, Max, has his back to us in this photograph. This is the last photograph of them that was taken as well. And so then Lilia is able to explain the events of what her father saw, of what she heard. And I can tell you, and I know this is hard, but I have yet to come across a witness who there's always emotion, and the emotion that they carry many times, many times, the first time they're telling their testimony to what they witnessed, their families are hearing it for the first time as well too. And she had not been back to this beach since 1952. And this was the first time that she went back, but she was very much wanting to make sure that we knew what took place. So with that, I will conclude with, again, to the memory of those that were lost. We are working as hard as we can, as fast as we can, to do as much as we can to make sure that this history, this narrative, the personal piece, taking it down to that single person and giving them back voice that was taken from them, is our mission. And I thank Rabbi Reins. Thank you so much for inviting me this evening. Thank you for letting me be a part of the community and teaching, and hoping that we can do some good with this. So thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Absolutely. It's a heartbreaking story, but you have devoted yourself to sharing it. And each of us who have had the privilege of hearing you tonight, I know we'll go in our own ways and share it further. Those of you who know Todd know that this is just a sliver of some of the experiences. He regaled me just last week with a story of someone who was telling his adventures by even bringing out a photo album, almost with pride of his participation, his father's participation and his participation as a perpetrator. Because at first he thought that there was that they were French documentarians who were coming to celebrate this. Was it Ukrainian, Todd? Latvian hero. And then when he found out that you were actually trying to find out about what happened to the Jews, he shut up pretty quick. Your work is, there's a lot more work to be done. And I'm so proud of what you are doing and so appreciative of what you are sharing with us. We're going to turn towards the last part of this service, banking on what Todd has shared, because this can't just be a a time of looking with the despair of what humanity has done to our people, because there's always going to be hope. There are people like Todd and so many of the survivors who have informed and have built this world, saying in the face of evil, we have a triumphant spirit. So we're going to share just a couple of pieces, Rabbi Coleman and I, a couple of quotations. I have one from Hugo Grin. We'll chant El Malei Rachamim, we'll share the Kaddish, and we'll conclude with Eli, Eli, and Hatikva. Again, a prayer of hope, a song of hope. If you have your prayer books, this is a very famous passage from Hugo Grin, became a Reform rabbi. He says, "It was the cold winter of 1944, and although we had nothing like calendars, my father, who was my fellow prisoner there, took me and some of our friends to a corner in our barrack." Here he is in a concentration camp. He announced that it was the eve of Hanukkah, and he produced a curious clay bowl and began to light a wick immersed in his precious but now melted margarine ration. Before he could recite the first blessing, I protested at the waste of food. And he looked at me and he said, and then he looked at the lamp and he finally said, "You and I have seen that it is possible to live up to 3 weeks without food. We once lived almost 3 days without water, but you cannot live properly for 3 minutes without hope."
So a quote from Regina Jonas. She was the first female rabbi. We know that she was at Theresienstadt and rabbied to people there. And we believe she was then brought to Auschwitz and murdered there alongside her mother. She said, "If worry and despondency seek our undoing, then we should think about Yizkor in such a way that we carry on the work of our ancestors from Sinai, in that we today are truly their children, and in that we are parents of the future generations. Then the chain does not break, and we gain the strength to carry out nobly these historic responsibilities, and to thank God sincerely that Yizkor has become the celebration of the soul."
El Malei Rachamim is on page 530. El Malei Rachamim shochen b'maromim, hamse menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina, במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר רקיע מזהירים את נשמות 6 מיליון אחינו ואחיותינו שנהרגו על קידוש השם. בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרוע בצרוע החיים את נשמתם. Adonai hu nachalatam v'yanuchu b'shalom al mishkavam v'nomar Amen. Fully compassionate God on high, to our 6 million brothers and sisters murdered because they were Jews, grant clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold them in the embrace of your wings. Secure their souls in eternity. Adonai, they are yours. They will rest in peace. Amen.
We are still in the counting, early in the counting of the Omer, the days in between, the 7 weeks between Passover and Shavuot. So on page 570, we count the Omer together. Say, Hineni muchan u'mezuman l'kayem mitzvat aseh shel sfirat ha'omer. I am ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat ha'omer.
Amen.
Our praise to you, Adonai, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to count the Omer. Hayom 11 yom shehem shavua echad ve'arba yamim la'omer. Today is the 11th day, which is 1 week and 4 days of the Omer. We continue on page 586 with Aleinu L'Shabeach. Aleinu L'Shabeach L'Adon HaKol, Lateit Gidula Leotzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kigoyei Aratzot, V'lo Samanu K'mishpachot Adama, Shelo Sam Chelkeinu Kahem, V'gor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam, Va'anachnu Korim, Umishtachavim Umodim, Lifnei Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'nemar V'ayadonai L'melech Al Kol Haaretz Bayom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad U'shimo Echad.
Page 533, there's a unique version of the Kaddish. It has the Aramaic and the Hebrew words, but interspersed there are also mention of the death camps, the concentration camps, places where so many of our loved ones perished. It does not mention, and it should, the killing fields like Babi Yar, and I have to mention Rabbi Ray Zwerin and Ricky, who because of Rabbi Zwerin and many of the Temple Sinai members, there is an important memorial to Babi Yar here in Denver. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to gather there over the last year, but I promised Helen Ginsberg and others that as soon as we could, we will get out there and we'll have a program. And Rabbi, I look forward to having you share that as well. So we don't have we have Babi Yar, but we don't have all of the killing fields mentioned. So if you want to turn to page 533 and follow, so we say these words to commemorate, to honor, to make sacred the memories of our loved ones who perished in the Shoah. Yitgadal,
Auschwitz,
V'yitkadash,
Lodz,
Shemei Rabbah,
Ponar,
Ve'alma Devarach Chirutei,
Babi Yar,
Ve'yimloch Malchutei,
Majdanek,
V'chayechon of Yomei Achon,
Birkenau,
V'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael,
Kovno,
V'agalau B'zman Kariv,
Janauska,
V'imru Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah Mevarach Leolam Ul Almei Almaya Yitbarach V'yishtabach
Theresienstadt,
V'yitba'a V'yitromam
Buchenwald,
V'yitnaseh V'yithadar
Treblinka,
V'yitalev V'yithalal
Vilna,
Shemei Kedusha Barichu
Bergen-Belsen,
Le'ela
Mauthausen,
Min Kol Birchata V'shirata
Dachau,
Tushbechata V'nechamata
Minsk,
Da'amiram Be'alma
Warsaw,
V'imru Amen. Yeh Shalom Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Osei Shalom B'mromav Hu Ya'asei Shalom Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. This poem on page 653, we know it as Eli Eli, but it's really Licha Lekazaria by Chana Senesh, this hero of Israel who parachuted back into Hungary to try to save Jews, to save her family as well, and she perished. But her songs live on. Eli Eli, on the way to Kazaria.
Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hacho bechayam, lishrush shel haman. of the heavens, the prayer of the heart, the sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart.
Thank you, Dan. As I mentioned, the Hatikva, that prayer literally says the hope that there's a safe haven for our people. In the shadow of the Holocaust, Israel was born, not because of the Holocaust, because the Chalutzim, the pioneers, knew well beforehand what was inevitable, and that the hatred, the anti-Semitism of Europe would one day consume those who stayed. Thank God we have an Israel now in which there are over 7 million Jews from all over the world. It has become a place of hope. And so on page 678, you find the words of Hatikva, the hope.
Kol od balevav penima, nefesh Yehudi homiya, ufate mizrach kadima, ayin letzion Sophia. Od lo avda tikvatenu, hatikva bat shnot apayim, miotam choshim be'artzenu, eretz Zion Yerushalayim, miotam choshim be'artzenu, eretz Zion ve'Yerushalayim.
I want to thank again Todd Hennessy for being such an amazing teacher, for sharing with us just a sliver of what you have been teaching and sharing. And I look forward to many more sessions that you'll have with us. I want to give, of course, a thanks to Rabbi Coleman and to Daniolis, to Ricky Zwerin and Jean Guthrie and Shirley Beer Powell, and to the Reisner family for sharing as well, and Susan and Sam for your lighting each a candle. Rabbi Coleman has just a little announcement, because there's some very important program that's a part of the Zoom program that deals with the Holocaust.
Yes, the Zoomathon schedule went out in your emails around 6 o'clock tonight. We're really looking forward. It's next weekend, but we really wanted to highlight tonight specifically two of our programs that are telling the stories of the Holocaust. We have one, Kavod, which is a photography project that has worked to photograph Holocaust survivors before they die. And they have done 1,174 photos so far. So they're going to come and talk with us about that project. And the other, we're really, really excited about taking advantage of Zoom for this. We have a tour of the Anne Frank House in the Netherlands. They're going to tour us virtually through the Anne Frank House, an opportunity that we wouldn't all have otherwise without Zoom, unless we're all going to Amsterdam together, but that's a different story. So we, Amsterdam tour of the Anne Frank House is 2 o'clock on Sunday, and the Kavod project is 4:30 on Saturday, in addition to all kinds of other programming, but particularly in Yom HaShoah, we wanted to highlight those two programs and hope you're able to join us.
I know Jean's going to be tuning into that Anne Frank House, because she went all the way to Amsterdam and didn't get to go in. But so thank you, Rabbi, for making sure that we get a chance for that. Rabbi Zwerin, did you want to share any words? Okay, just unmute. Yeah. Can you? No, it's not working. There you go. You're on. Oh. You almost try one more time. Unmute.
There we go. The program tonight was meaningful and powerful, and it's always good to see the community together, no matter where we are and no matter how we have to do it. It's good to be able to gather and to be able to share together thoughts, feelings, emotions. May we do so never feeling like victims, but always feeling like survivors who have succeeded and have overcome the evil, each in our own different way. And may it always be so.
I would like to say something.
Go ahead, please.
Well, other concentration camps that I know of that were in Yugoslavia, and of course that I was in one of them, and also in Italy, like the Ferramonti, and nobody ever mentions those, although they were under Italian governments, and they were kind of a little bit easy, but still it was a concentration camp. And there were also concentration camps that were done by the Ustashi that were from Yugoslavia too. And a lot of people don't mention those at all. My father was murdered in one of those, and I think my sister and my mother died in one of those separately. So it would be good to mention every once in a while that there were other people that were not exactly the best. So anyway.
Thank you, Ricky. It's important that what you shared. We need to hear all of that, and that's part of our ongoing mitzvah. Make sure we record the history and make sure that none of it is forgotten. Thank you so much. With the words that Rabbi Zwerin shared, we say Amen. And to all of you, I wish you a good night. And I hope that you'll tune in tomorrow for Lunch and Learn. Ozzy Sladek, who is one of our Temple Sinai members, who was a former executive director, who sings with such incredible passion for us on the high holidays, the partisan song. His story of being a survivor has been taught all over, and he couldn't be here tonight. One of the reasons was because he was teaching at another congregation. I said, Ozzy, come on, you have to be with us. So tomorrow, Thursday at noon, he's going to be sharing his story, and everyone will have a chance, a lot of Q&A tomorrow. So it's going to be a way for each of us to be able to interact with truly a remarkable man and a remarkable story. So with that, we say Laila Tov, and may God bless all of us. Amen.